Candace Owens, Brexit movement founder and conservative commentator, and Cornel West, professor of philosophy at Harvard University and professor emeritus at Princeton. Dr. West, I also want to tell you, I really appreciate your coming on the show. You're an old style liberal. I don't mean old and old. I mean, but you like debate and conversation, and I think that's just awesome. So thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. And I want to begin with a simple question, Dr. West. Are the president's policies, let's just focus now on his economic policies, are they helping the African-American community, in your view?
Now, I think that the statistics certainly look good through a narrow lens, so I give him credit in that regard. But we have to keep in mind that on the one hand, you still have grotesque wealth inequality, you have job insecurity, so many people who are working more than one job. We know many people who have withdrawn from the labor force are not counted at all. But I think the problem is, though, my dear sister, is that the president has a language that creates an atmosphere that is so xenophobic against black folk, Mexicans, Muslims. He rarely wants to stay in contact with their humanity. So when you look at the statistics, that's one thing. But when you create an atmosphere and an ambience of xenophobia, it reinforces the polarization, and therefore many black folk wouldn't even be able to connect the statistics that look good with the language, the atmosphere that feels so bad. And that cold-hearted, mean-spiritedness is something that cuts very, very deep in the spirit of people.
Have you met him? Have you met him, Dr. West? Ever met the president?
No, I've never had a conversation with my right-wing brother. I mean, you know, I've called him a gangster and a proto-fascist in terms of separation of power. But he's a human being. He's a human being, and I could, you know.
No, I'm just saying this because, look, you and I don't agree a lot, but I actually really like you. I think I just like the fact that you're out there and you're advocating. I have no problem with it, and I wouldn't call you mean-spirited. We disagree, but I think if you actually were with the president, you might find that you could accomplish a lot together and you could do a lot together. I really believe that. He'll work with pretty much anybody, and that's what I found in my experience. So I'm just throwing that out there, Candace. But there is this tonality issue that people seize on with the president, and they always go back to Charlottesville. They always go back to this S-hole countries. Those are the two things they really seize upon, the travel ban. Those three things probably, for some, just wipe out any other accomplishment. Your reaction?
Well, look, I think the president is doing something different. Definitely his tone is different because he tells the truth and he doesn't pander to black America. He hasn't offered us hot sauce. He's offered us jobs. That makes many people uncomfortable because they're from an era where race hustling is a business. They're used to telling black Americans that they're victims, writing books about victimhood, and that is no longer selling in America. And I just wanted to comment back on saying that xenophobia is something that black Americans are afraid of. Xenophobia means that you have a fear, Mr. West, of foreigners. Black Americans are not foreigners in this country. We are a piece of the American dream. We've earned a piece of this American dream, and we're getting tired of people telling us that we are somehow separate of it. I mean, that's really what I have to say. We're doing tremendous under this presidency. There is no candidate that is offering anything on the left to counter what Trump has offered. They're just offering more rhetoric, more fear-mongering, and unfortunately, time is up on this narrative. We are ready to move on and embrace our futures.
Oh, Dr. West, go ahead.
If I can come straight, I mean, first, xenophobia in the generic sense means the fear of other. And black folk have been othered, enslaved, Jim Crow, and so forth. So if you want the narrow understanding is just foreigner, but it's the other. Those who have been otherized, those who have been marginalized in this sense. But think of when you call my dear sister Maxine Waters low IQ.
She does have a low IQ.
That's vicious.
That's a fact.
You said what?
That is a fact. If she took an IQ exam, you would find out that Maxine Waters had a very low IQ. And I will push that challenge. It may not be nice, but it is truth.
Okay.
When he calls Brother Colin a son of a bitch, you see, this kind of language is ridiculous.
I have never used that language.
Not you.
No, I'm talking about the president. I'm not talking about you, my sister. I'm talking about the president.
West, look,
the president called Brother Colin a son of a bitch.
Okay, but
I think that's a fact.
Yeah, I think the nasty language, it's on both sides. I mean, if they call him a gangster, a traitor. I mean, so we can play that game all night long. But I do want to.
You got language on both sides.
I want to get to this. The prevailing wisdom, I think Dr. West, highlighted this, is that race relations have deteriorated almost under this president. That's the thought. And that Obama was the great racial healer. Yet, in a new study by a pair of sociologists at UPenn, this is not some conservative outlet, they found that, quote, anti-black prejudice declined by a statistically insignificant degree between 2012 and 2016. But then after 2016, it took a sharp dive. There was also a general fall in anti-Hispanic prejudice, too. So, Professor West, to what do you attribute these findings? So prejudice is on the downswing, not on the upswing, at least in these first few years of Trump.
Well, based on this particular study, I'd have to examine how they gather their evidence and so forth. But anti-Jewish attacks, anti-Muslim attacks, anti-Mexican attacks, and not just anti-black attacks, but also the police departments, the militarizing of the police departments, the withdrawal of the investigations when police do, in fact, shoot fellow citizens, whatever color they are, but disproportionately chocolate, disproportionately black and brown.
Right, that was
absolutely.
Under Obama, like
That's
Ferguson
true.
and
That's
all
true.
that stuff, right?
That's true.
It's not
I'm just talking about continuities.
That's
I'm talking about continuities.
Right. I do want to share this. This was a moment that I think, again, going back to what Candace has worked on and spoken about, and what Dr. West, I think you two could actually be happy about together. Happened at the White House, I think it was last month, and it was an event commemorating the First Step Act. Let's watch.
And I really thank you for signing that bill. When y'all passed this, I could have fell through the floor.
I'm an example of a woman who has been given a second chance in life.
And it's an experience that I'll never forget.
2 months ago, I was in a prison cell, and I'm in the White House. That's continue to make America great again.
Now, Dr. West, I mean, I don't think they were feeling xenophobia or mean-spiritedness. I think they actually found a president who was willing to work with people who really didn't even like him and didn't think he was probably going to accomplish much. And it got almost no coverage. I think we played it on our show, maybe a few other places, but it didn't get any coverage. What's your reaction to seeing that?
No, I think that's a very important attempt to zero in on this vicious policy in the last 40 years of mass incarceration, punitive attitudes toward those engaged in various kinds of crimes. I've been blessed to teach in prisons for 37 years, a raw way to step program. I was just in Norfolk. It's something that has an impact on the ground, and I'd give the president credit for that. It's not as if he has nothing to offer. It's just that the dominant orientation is still tied to what I'm critical of both parties, because identity politics for me is milquetoast neoliberal politics that don't talk about corporate power, don't talk about poverty, don't talk about militarism. But the Republicans still strike me as so cold-hearted, mean-spirited, and they're still tied to corporate power and Wall Street and won't hit poverty head-on. But when it comes to prison, when it comes to statistics, I give the president credit for that. But it's still small relative to what I'm looking for. I see it in neither both parties other than Brother Bernie Sanders, but that's another dialogue, as you know.
Bernie Sanders.
Well,
we won't go into that right now.
No, we won't go to that. But I have to go back to this idea of race relations under Obama, which I almost fell out of my chair in the CNN story that came out in October of 2016. They got worse. 54% of Americans said they got worse. Only 16% said they got better. This was at the end of the Obama administration. So as Cornel West said, you had Ferguson, you had Freddie Gray in Baltimore, you had all this stuff bursting out on the streets of America with the first African-American president in the White House, and that healing didn't seem to take place.
Right. Look, at that point, I was on the left. So when Barack Obama first went into office, I was a liberal, and I changed my mind due to exactly what you're saying. He drove this nation apart. President Trump is bringing this nation together because what he is talking about is patriotism. Patriotism knows no sex, it knows no color, it knows no creed. The liberal media can ignore all the work that he's doing in Black America all they want. Every statistic in the world shows you right now that Black support for Donald Trump has doubled. And that is meaningful. And I'm telling you that by 2020, he is going to be the first president to crack the Black vote to the detriment of the Democrats.
Hey, Professor West, do you still do work in prisons? Do you still do it?
Absolutely.
Can I come with you? Can I come with you on one of your
You can come anytime you like. We're going to keep track of the humanity and rich imagination and intelligence of our brothers and sisters who are incarcerated to make sure they have a better chance to keep and make sure that they can unleash their potential. But I say to Sister Candace, that I like her independence of mind. I think she's
going off the
wrong
screen,
most
though.
of the
Get in the
time. I
box.
fight for her right to be wrong in that regard. But I
I'll fight for your
would
right
wish
to be
that she
wrong
would have
too,
moved.
Mr. West.
Absolutely, but I would have wished that you would have moved further to the left, because when you have a Black Lives Movement under a black president, it's not going to be a matter of then moving to the
Mr.
right,
West,
where they have been using.
Socialism has already been tried in our community. It's been tried via welfare policies, and it has completely crippled the black community. It has completely crippled the black family via the welfare policies. You know that. So I had to creep all the way to the right. And I have to tell
Socialism
you,
is
I'm happy
power
here.
sharing. Socialism
you know
is not
this is a fact.
giving
Black
and becoming
go
people
conservative.
dependent
Black
on
conservatives
programs.
never
It's
go liberal.
power sharing.
Mr. West, I appreciate your time, but you know black liberals go conservative, but black conservatives never go liberal, and there's a reason for that.
And I would just add that Wall
I don't know.
Street.
Black people are complicated. Black people are complicated. We go back and forth, but I wish we had more black leftists.
All right, guys, we got to go. This is a fascinating conversation. We have to have you both back. Thank you very much,
Bye,
both of you, for being here. And up next, how did